Decades ago, Cadillac was pretty much the benchmark that every other luxury automaker tried to hit. These days, though, it's left with a lot of catching up to do because the market has become so saturated with so many really good products. And now even Hyundai has decided to enter the luxury game with its new brand called Genesis, which puts even more pressure on Cadillac. So what I wanted to know was how Cadillac stacks up to this luxury newcomer. Here we have the Cadillac CT6 and the Genesis G90, two full-sized executive luxury sedans that, as tested, ring in at about the same price. Both cars represent the best of what each brand has to offer and are really impressive whether you're the driver or you're being chauffeured. Both seem to be pretty equally matched on paper, but the numbers don't always tell the full story, so let's hop in for a closer look. Cadillac has been on a roll lately. Its cars have been really good and they just keep getting better, although sometimes they're lacking a little something special. This one, though, is really imposing and it has a great road presence. The CT6 is powered by a smooth 3-liter twin-turbo V6 and has all-wheel drive, which are both optional features. As standard, the sedan has a Turbo 4 and only drives the rear wheels. The Genesis ups the Cadillac by offering a twin-turbo V6 and all-wheel drive as standard. The engine in this CT6 makes 404 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque. This twin-turbo V6 is a great engine and there's barely any turbo lag, so as soon as you mash your foot to the floor, you're instantly rewarded by loads and loads of power, and that lasts all throughout the rev range. This is also a great chassis. The car is really light and it feels fun and like it's willing to play. It's also a lot lighter than the Genesis, which becomes really obvious behind the wheel. All the engines are hooked up to an 8-speed automatic, which feels a little bit less refined than I would expect in a big luxury sedan. It seems to get confused and make kind of clunky gear changes from time to time, and this is a big shame because the engine is so great, but it's still not a deal breaker by any means. The Cadillac also has a really beautiful interior with some very luxurious materials. The infotainment system and climate controls are also really well laid out and easy to use. The touchscreen is responsive and user-friendly for the most part, but you can also control it with this little touchpad, which I find kind of awful to use. You're better off just using the touchscreen. The CT6 also has a bit more legroom for rear passengers, and it feels like a smaller car to drive than the Genesis. What kills me about the CT6, though, are all the little things that add up to be kind of annoying. All the stuff is just kind of gimmicky and it just takes away from the whole experience. Just one example of that is this video feed of what's behind the car. It seems like it would be a great idea, and in theory it is, but it's actually pretty terrible to use at night, and even during the day it just takes too long for your brain to process this new point of view. I imagine this is something that people will just learn to get used to, but I ended up just using the traditional mirror anyways. The CT6 is a great car, especially as a driver's car, but it's not perfect. This big sedan lacks some of the cohesiveness that I really look for in a luxury sedan. And that brings us to the Genesis, which was very hard for me to find anything wrong with. There wasn't one moment when I was driving it when I thought that doesn't make sense or why did they do that, which is something I found myself thinking a lot in the Cadillac. One of the first things you realize in the Genesis is how smooth and quiet it is. It really has this regal air that the Cadillac lacks, and it just feels better executed and way more luxurious. First off, its suspension is calibrated to be a lot softer, so it's much better at giving you that soft, floaty feeling that people want in a big luxury sedan. It just glides over rough roads, but it also doesn't mean it's sloppy in corners. The G90 definitely isn't as performance-oriented as the Cadillac, but I don't really see that as a deal breaker in this segment. Although it's also powered by a twin-turbo V6, it has 365 horsepower and 376 pound-feet of torque, which is a lot less than the Cadillac. Combined with its heavier weight, the G90 isn't as fast or as sporty as the CT6, but it also doesn't need to be. It doesn't mean, however, that the drive is lifeless either. Power delivery is strong and smooth, the steering is also well weighted, and the transmission, which also has 8 speeds, fires off seamless shifts and never gets confused. The G90 definitely feels like a larger car to drive than the Cadillac, but it's still entirely manageable and pretty easy to park. The Genesis is just really good at being a big luxury sedan. It has all these nice little touches and everything feels really fancy, which makes the whole experience just a lot more special than it is in the Cadillac. But at this price point, the Genesis also has more technology included as standard, like all the driver and safety assistance you could ever want. The best part is that they aren't as jarring as the ones in the Cadillac, which are mostly all optional. The base Genesis does cost quite a bit more than a base CT6, but it also has a much more impressive list of standard features. It basically comes fully loaded and there are barely any other options that you can add on except for a V8 engine and some more backseat amenities. If you want a big luxury sedan that's more focused on driving dynamics, the Cadillac is definitely the one you want. But the Genesis actually out-Cadillac's Cadillac and provides an all-around better luxury experience. The only thing is that nobody really knows what Genesis is, but as long as you're not a car snob that cares about brand cachet, it's clear which one the winner is.